the winter door, the cloak peg waits in the last dark before morning. The door is closed, but the cold has not forgotten it. A thin draught gathers along the lower edge, slips over the threshold stone, and loses its strength before it reaches the low lamp near the wall. The peg is plain wood, fixed into a narrow board darkened by hands, damp wool, and many seasons of return. It does not shine. It does not ask to be noticed. It only holds what has been left there carefully. A worn cloak hangs from it, heavy at the shoulders and darker along the hem. The cloth has known rain, lame mud, stone passageways, and the slow warmth of rooms where people enter quietly and leave before full day. This is not a chamber for display. It is a small threshold room, a place between outside and inside, between cold work and warmer silence. The objects here belong to arrival, waiting, drying, and being ready again. A pair of leather sandals rests below the peg. They are turned slightly toward the door, not as if someone will hurry into them, but as if they remember the direction of the courtyard and the careful step over uneven stone. The sandals are practical and worn. Their straps have stretched where fingers pull them open. Their soles have darkened near the heel. Under the peg sits a small bench, no wider than a person needs for pausing long enough to remove wet sandals or gather a cloak before stepping into the dark. Its top is rubbed smooth at the edge and rougher toward the back, where damp wool and cold leather have rested many times. No cushion softens it. The wood keeps the shape of use rather than comfort. A narrow basket stands beneath, holding a folded rag, a length of simple cord, and one small brush dark with old dust. These are not arranged for neat display. They remain where they are kept because morning work returns to them easily. In many medieval houses and religious communities, such threshold spaces carried more duty than attention. They were not principal rooms, yet they held the small transitions that made larger routines possible. A garment hung here did not merely dry. It waited in its proper order. Sandals left here did not signal laziness or abandon. They marked the pause between outward labor and inward quiet. The door itself is made of joined boards, thick enough to keep out most of the night air, though never all of it. Along the iron latch and hinge straps the cold gathers first. Metal learns the night more quickly than wood. By the time the lamp has burned low, the latch is chill, even when the board around it still holds a trace of yesterday's warmth. In a world before sealed rooms and even interior heat, the simple fact of a heavy door mattered. It divided drafts, smells, and sounds. It slowed the weather. It protected sleep in rooms beyond from the sharper edge of the outer dark. Yet it was never perfect, and the traces of imperfection are everywhere here. A damp hem on the cloak, dust caught in the corner of the threshold, mud dried into a fine brown line near the sandals. These signs do not suggest disorder. They suggest that the room has done what it is for. It has received the night from outside and allowed the rest of the house to remain quieter because of it. The lamp by the wall is low and practical, perhaps an oil lamp with a short wick or a small tallow light, set where it can be reached without crossing the room in darkness. Its flame is not bright enough to master the corners. It only keeps the immediate shapes of peg, bench, latch, and floor from disappearing. Such light changes how objects are known. In daylight, a cloak can seem little more than cloth. In this hour, it becomes weight, fold, and edge. The sandals become two quiet hollows where feet had been. The board around the peg shows a long dark stain where damp fabric has brushed it across many seasons. Medieval interiors were full of this kind of memory. Materials did not reset themselves each morning into clean surfaces. They recorded contact. They kept touch, moisture, grease, smoke, and friction in a slow, visible archive. That is one reason modest rooms speak so clearly across time. A richer chamber might distract with carving or fabric. A threshold room says almost everything through what use has left behind. The cloak hanging here is not ceremonial. It is a working layer, thick enough to hold warmth around shoulders during early hours, and broad enough to take damp without failing at once. Wool was valuable because it endured weather, repair, and repeated use. A cloak might be patched, relined, cut down, or handed from one person to another before its life was finished. The one on this peg seems to have passed through many ordinary mornings. Its hem is darker where it once brushed wet stone. Near the neck, the cloth has eased into a softer curve from long wear. One fastening loop is a little looser than the other. Nothing about it asks for admiration. It asks only to be dependable again when the hand reaches for it before dawn. In this way, the cloak carries more than warmth. It carries routine. It remembers the body that lifts it not as a heroic figure, but as a repeated burden of cold walks, half-lit corridors, and the quiet need to move from one task to another before the world is fully awake. Below, the sandals wait in a different way. Leather keeps shape only by being used, dried, and used again. When it is set aside after a damp walk, it first yields a faint smell of wet hide and cold earth, then grows still. In many households, the place where sandals or shoes were left mattered because mud and water had to stop somewhere. Threshold rooms, passages, and little service corners absorbed this duty. A fine hall could not remain fine if all weather entered with every footstep. Even a humble house needed one place to catch what the outside tried to bring in. The sandals beneath the peg do that quietly. Their soles hold the trace of rough stone. Their straps bend open where fingers have worked them in haste many times. One heel leans slightly inward, not from damage but from habit. The object does not merely show wear. It shows direction. It tells of repeated routes through yard, lane, and door, and of the brief pause here where the night's chill is handed over to the room before the body goes farther in. There may also be a small rail or second peg nearby, empty now, except for a loop of cord or a rag left to dry. Empty places matter in rooms like this. They tell what has already been taken away or what will soon return. A vacant peg can mean the first garment of the morning has already gone. It can also mean that the room is prepared for the next arrival. This quiet readiness belongs to many medieval working spaces. They are rarely inert. Even when no person stands in them, they remain arranged around expectation. Here the expectation is soft and slow. No alarm breaks the stillness. No urgent weather beats at the door. The room simply waits in order. The cord may later tie a bundle. The rag may wipe moisture from leather or wood. The bench may hold a folded cloth for a moment, and then be bare again. Such tasks are too small to become grand events in written history, yet they governed comfort and continuity more faithfully than many louder things. The house functioned because ordinary transitions had places prepared for them. Outside the door, the courtyard is still dark. Stone there keeps the memory of night's cold more sternly than wood indoors ever can. Perhaps frost does not cover it, but the air near the ground is sharp enough that cloth left too thin would stiffen before long. This is why the threshold room feels so necessary. It is not warm in the way a fire room might be warm, but it is warmer than the yard, calmer than the passage beyond the outer wall, and drear than the open air. It is a buffer, and buffers often go unnoticed until one imagines their absence. Without this small interval, cold would travel farther, damp would spread more quickly, and the simple work of leaving or returning would become rougher every time. Medieval architecture relied on such gradations more than modern people often remember. A house or abbey did not move from outside to inside in a single clean step. It passed through layered edges, each with its own practical labor. This little room beside the winter door carries one of those edges with quiet competence. What makes the room especially calm is that the main labor is already finished. The cloak is hung. The sandals are set down. The latch is closed. The brush and rag wait without demand. Nothing more must happen for the space to fulfill its role tonight. It has completed a small sequence of care, and now rests inside the result. This gives the objects a different kind of dignity. They are not frozen in action, and they are not arranged as tokens of status. They are at ease inside usefulness. The peg holds. The bench supports. The lamp keeps just enough sight. The threshold keeps the cold in check. The room asks almost nothing of itself now except to continue being what it has become through repetition. That sort of stillness is easy to overlook in brighter histories, yet it may be one of the truest textures of past life. Much of existence was not decisive, theatrical, or visible at a distance. Much of it was maintenance already completed, waiting to be needed again with the first dim hour. As the lamp shortens, the room seems to draw inward. Edges soften. The cloak becomes a darker shape within the dark. The sandals lose detail and keep only outline. The latch gathers one last small line of dull metal light before it too settles back into shadow. None of this feels like disappearance. It feels more like the room returning to the low order from which it began. By the time the first movement of morning comes, perhaps before dawn is visible, the hand that enters here will already know where everything is. It will not need brightness to find the cloak or bench or door. That is another form of object memory. Rooms teach the body by repetition until gesture becomes quiet knowledge. In a world with limited light, this mattered deeply. Familiarity reduced noise, delay, and stumbling. It let people move through cold hours without having to wake themselves fully to do so. The threshold room beside the winter door is shaped by that kind of knowledge, and in its restraint there is a remarkable softness. So the peg remains where it has long remained, holding the cloak in the last dark before morning. The sandals wait below. The bench keeps its small, worn surface. The lamp stays low. Cold stands on the far side of the door without entering fully. Nothing here is grand, and nothing needs to be. The room has done its quiet work by receiving what came in from the night and arranging it into stillness. It asks for no witness. It keeps no ceremony. It only preserves a gentle interval between weather and shelter, between movement and rest. In that interval, wood, leather, wool, stone, and dim flame hold together a practical peace. It is the kind of peace made not from comfort alone, but from habit, order, and the patient intelligence of humble things left where they belong. And before the first bell, before the yard takes shape again in the thin light, that small piece remains on the peg, at the bench, and beside the closed winter door.